So in order to achieve the intelligent information network, we need as much guidance as possible. And we'll be going through and designing this remarkable network throughout the 5-day boot camp here at Internetwork Expert. You're probably not surprised that this service-oriented network architecture that Cisco gives us as a blueprint to achieve the intelligent information network, you're probably not surprised that it is a 3-layered design. You're not surprised because that was the overall phases that we would try and achieve the intelligent information network in, right? We're going to want to attempt to achieve the phase of integrating the transport, and that's primarily, done through our network infrastructure. And then we integrate services, and then we integrate applications. So SONA follows this paradigm. SONA features the network infrastructure, the interactive services that sit on top of the network infrastructure, and it features the applications. So the first thing we need to memorize, and by the way, a lot of the material that we've looked at thus far, we need to memorize this information if we are interested in becoming a Cisco certified design associate. So the first information we have to memorize about SONA is the fact that it is indeed a 3-layered design that includes network infrastructure, interactive services, and applications. Now, if you look at each of these layers of SONA, you will find, obviously, different components in the various layers. For instance, classic components that we would find in the network infrastructure layer is components for like retail store outlets, components for data center portions of our network, components for the internet edge. In our upcoming lessons today, we'll talk more about the modules that you would find at the network infrastructure or network systems layer. I like to consistently call it the network infrastructure layer. Obviously, it's at this layer that we're going to find like our routers, our servers, etc. But notice we don't just generically say, oh yeah, that's all our routers and servers from Cisco. We instead point to the fact that there is going to be these modules that we utilize. And anytime we use the word module in here, we know this is like this really convenient way to ease the complexity of what we're building. We're going to build in a modular fashion as we try and achieve SONA, and therefore the Intelligent Information Network. So there's a lot more modules that are going to make up this particular network infrastructure layer, and we'll be looking at those modules in great detail later on in day 1 of our 5-day CCDA bootcamp. Notice at the services layer, there's a lot of potential services, like security services for network security enforcement like we talked about earlier. How about mobility? We haven't talked about that yet. Pretty cool. With mobility, we have the ability to access resources from the network just totally transparently as we move from city to city, state to state, country to country. Identity services. Who are we? Who is entities that are trying to interact with our network? Storage services. The virtualization of the network. Notice how they drew this. Notice how the network virtualization sits directly on top of the network services. That was done very, very intentionally, so that you can have virtual gateways, for example, so that if there is a failure of some key component of the network heals itself transparently to the end user, and there is no disruption of services on the network. And then for the application layer here of SONA, we can see how Cisco is going to, of course, work with a wide variety of partners. If Cisco is really excited by an application, right, they'll buy that company. Cisco was really excited by WebEx, for example, so they went ahead and they bought WebEx. But obviously, Cisco can't purchase every single vendor of a cool application, so they partner. They partner strategically with application vendors to make sure that they will follow standards that will allow their applications to be heavily integrated with the network. So, as we memorize Cisco's, SONA's architecture, we know it all starts at the bottom with the network infrastructure. The network infrastructure. And later on today, we'll be looking at the Cisco Enterprise Architecture. And this Cisco Enterprise Architecture is going to reveal for us the particular modules that we can utilize to build this complex network infrastructure. Not to give too much away, but we'll be taking a look at a campus area that includes a LAN. We'll be taking a look at a WAN area, a data center area, a branch area, and these are just some of the modules and submodules that make up Cisco's enterprise architecture. Sure enough, there's lots of networking equipment, of course, that makes up this layer. We've got our servers, we've got our clients, we've got our storage devices, we've got our routers, we've got our switches, we've got our intrusion prevention systems, we've got our NAC appliances, we've got our Mars servers, we've got, well, I'll just stop right there. Obviously, we'll be touring a lot of Cisco equipment that can make up this robust network infrastructure. The network infrastructure is the easiest for us to comprehend and work with because typically for most of the CCDA students in the class, they've got the most experience with the network infrastructure layer. They're already employed supporting various modules or various functions within the network infrastructure. Now, on top of the network infrastructure, we have our interactive services. These interactive services are going to be optimizing communications between applications and right all the way down to the services and network infrastructure components. Key services that we're going to study in this course are things like security, okay, filtering traffic, for example, or catching attacks, catching such important things as denial of service attacks against us. We'll take a look at identity services to make sure we know just who is attempting to access our network. Obviously, voice is hugely important, as is video. We'll talk quality of service. We'll talk virtualization. These are all key examples of interactive services that are going to help achieve that goal, that nirvana for us in this course of the intelligent information network. We know the network infrastructure houses the interactive services, which houses the actual applications. Woohoo! Are applications that are going to make up the network. We have sophisticated, intelligent customer service apps, collaboration apps, unified messaging to have, oh gosh, voicemails come in as emails to us or text messages to us, going to one repository for getting all of the various communications we might have in the network. These days in the network, we might be communicating by voice. We might be communicating by email. We might be communicating by text message. We might be communicating by chat services. We want to unify all these communications together in applications so we can communicate more effectively and more succinctly and efficiently in our organizations. Enterprise resource planning apps. As you might guess, I have just given you a small sampling here of the robust applications that we may find in the services-oriented networking architecture of SONA. Pretty cool. You know, it's interesting. I mentioned Microsoft Office earlier, and even Microsoft Office has begun to become more and more intelligent, hasn't it? And Microsoft Office itself starts to use more and more of the services of the network. Things like collaboration are now possible in Office and things of that nature. So all of our applications, it seems like, have grown more robust, more scalable, and more intelligent. So you may think, well, what would really the benefits of SONA break down to be? Why would I invest all of the time and monetary resources into building the SONA network and ultimately using Cisco's SONA to build the intelligent information network? Well, what you end up with is a network that has a high degree of functionality. Oh yeah, the network can help us achieve this. The network can help us achieve that. Maybe it's overall cost savings, great. And maybe it's improved customer service. So the network just becomes more and more functional for your organization. The SONA and breaking things down into modular components, as we'll see later on today, that's going to give us an increased scalability. What does increased scalability mean? Well, it means that your network can grow very easily. If you are purchasing a new partner, you're going to purchase one of your partners and you need the network to grow to accommodate them. If you have organized yourself properly and built the network using the principles of this course, it is no big, huge issue to incorporate that new network and for you to grow. Maybe even internally you want to hire some new staff, create a new department. It's going to be very easy for your network to grow and accommodate those new individuals. Now, availability. Your network is more available. Now let's spend a few minutes on this. This means that this is a measure of how up your network is. And this is where we try and achieve the 5 nines of reliability, right? You often hear this 5 nines. You want your network to be up 99.999% of the time. Means you've got about like 2 minutes, I think, 2 to 5 minutes, I forget the exact number, but it's just a few minutes of downtime per year. Okay, so great. We want this really rich availability of our network services. Potentially, we want to try and achieve the often celebrated 5 nines of availability. 99.999% of the time, the network's up. I need you to contrast this, though. I need you to contrast this with the concept of reliability. I didn't put it on the slide, but it is something that is a benefit of SONA. It's often confused with availability but it really should be its own category. So we should list on this slide reliability separate from availability. What is reliability all about? It means, is the network functioning like it should? Are the devices functioning like they should? Are the services functioning like they should? Are the applications functioning like they should? You see, it's no longer enough to just have availability. We also want to make sure that these services and network infrastructure components and applications are functioning the way they should. That's reliability. Obviously, reliability turns into performance. We want a high-performance network. We want a high-performance network. We don't want costs to increase due to employee loss productivity, for example, as a result of poorly performing network components. We want things to be manageable. We want a high degree of manageability, 24/7, 365 days a year. If most everybody in the IT department is on vacation, we want the devices to be able to page them, to wake them up on their vacations, to send an alert to their iPhones, to make sure that they're aware of a failure of a key network component. And obviously, if we get all these ingredients together, we have networks that are efficient. Networks that will lower the total cost of ownership and be very, very efficient. Awesome. Awesome work, everybody, thus far in our CCDA course. Let's wrap up this first lesson. And this first lesson, we focused on the intelligent information network, on exactly what is the intelligent information network, and we focused on Cisco's blueprint for carrying us there, called SONA. And we know that SONA stands for, of course, Service-Oriented Network Architecture. Let's go ahead now and wrap up this lesson with some exam review. In which of the layers of SONA would you find unified messaging? In which of the layers of SONA would you find unified messaging? Interesting. Now, to answer this question, what you would first want to do is you would want to probably just think to yourself, okay, what were those three layers? We had the infrastructure layer, and this is where we know we're going to have our servers and routers and switches. We had our services layer, and then finally we had the application layer. Now, what's tricky about this question is, where is the unified messaging? Yeah, the unified messaging, good job, it is in the application layer. It does rely on services like QoS and voice in the services layer, but unified messaging, this does refer to the highest, possible level of this whole thing, where it's a unified messaging application that is riding on top of the voice and QoS services, that's riding on top of the routers and switches. So yeah, our answer here is the application layer of SONA is where we find our unified messaging. Well, I've got another review question for you folks before we wrap up this first lesson, and that question is, in which of the layers of SONA would you find Cisco routers, switches, and firewalls? Oh, too easy, right? Of the three layers, the network infrastructure, the services, and the applications, we know we're going to find our Cisco hardware located beautifully at the foundation of the intelligent information network, and that is our network infrastructure layer. I want to congratulate everyone in the live audience, and I want to congratulate all those folks that are enjoying this class on demand. You have just survived the first lesson of our CCDA course, in which we took a look at our lofty goal to build an intelligent information network, and we took a look at a Cisco blueprint to get there called Cisco's SONA. As we move throughout this 5-day boot camp, we'll continue to elaborate on how we build that intelligent information network, and we'll continue to build in a modular basis this robust, sophisticated Cisco network.